from planting, mowing, weeding, and mulching, with spring in full gear, many of us have already been out in our yards working hard.
And while it is great exercise, the next day or two can sometimes be a whole different story. You can get those aches, those pains in your neck, your back, your legs.
So how can you make sure your body is ready to handle your yard? Well, Brian Spiros has some ways to do just that. Brian?
Well, Jimmy and Lisa, this is the time of year when a lot of people will injure themselves out in their yard, especially coming out of the winter and all that inactivity. But there are ways to prevent it and, of course, to treat it. And here to talk all about it is Dr. Jon Burack, who is the owner of Synergy Chiropractic in Dover. Okay, so the first thing, this is probably a common sight for a lot of people. You get your gardening tools, you're gardening, you're bending down like this, or you're kneeling and you're reaching into mulch and to weed. This is the wrong way of doing things. When we do it like that, what is happening with our body?
Well, Brian, what's going on is when you're standing upright and leaning down, you're putting a lot of pressure on your lower back. Also, if you're kneeling down, it's good that you're low, but I saw that you were stretching forward. And what that's doing is putting a lot of strain, muscle strain on the neck, the upper back. It's also putting strain down in the lower parts of the back. So
it's causing a lot of problems, especially on your spinal discs as well. What is the correct way people should be, weeding, mulching, or gardening?
Great, Brian. Well, if I could get you to kneel down here. What you want to do is keep your hips kind of over top of your knees and also working closely to what you're doing. And then so that like way that you're not overstretching and fatiguing the muscles of your upper back. It also reduces the pressure in your lower back.
So you want to be low and close, and there's also the one knee approach.
That's right. As an alternative, and I actually like this one, you can come up on one knee, put your elbow on your knee like that. What that does, it helps support your upper back. You're not overworking your lower back, and this is good for people with knee trouble.
And I feel a lot more stability like this.
That's right.
All right, so that's the right way to do it. Now, the other thing is, what are some tips to help, prevent us from getting injured or getting those next day pains after doing yard work?
Well, Brian, probably the only surefire way of not hurting your back is to go and hire yourself a professional. But if you're not going to do that, because we're all aspiring landscapers, we want to get out and enjoy ourselves. What you want to do is make sure that you start by stretching. You want to do it before, during, and after, just simple stretches. You also want to build break time into your work time. For every hour that you work, you want to take about a 5 or 10 minute break. What that does, it lets you catch your breath. It's a great time to take a drink of water because you were out in the sun, we're getting hot, we're sweating. It's easy to become dehydrated. And what you want to do is take that water because the muscles require that. If they don't get proper hydration, they work ineffectively. We actually end up working harder than we intend to work.
So stay hydrated. The other thing is, you said stretching. What are some simple stretches people can do before doing yard work?
Just some simple stretches. You can interlace your fingers, palms up, reaching overhead. You can lean to one side. About 10 seconds, that stretches the sides of your upper body. You can also lean forward at the waist. You're only going to be down there for about 15 seconds or so, but let gravity do the work like you're going to touch your toes. The important thing to remember here is, as you come up, you want to put your hands on your knees and walk your way up.
We do get hurt, we do feel those pains. What is the best way to treat it? And this is where ice comes in.
That's right. Ice is very important. One of the biggest things I tell my patients, ice is your friend. If you don't know ice or heat, always go with ice. You can use heat at the wrong time and it can actually make the injury worse. So always go with ice. You want to put it on for about 15 minutes and then leave it off for about an hour. Repeat that process 2 to 3 times, or for 2 to 3 days, as much as you can.
And what happens if the pain gets worse or it lasts beyond those 3 days?
Well, certainly if it gets worse, it goes beyond those days, you're going to want to then call us, because we can get you in, we can really pinpoint the problem. It may be worse than you thought, and you don't want that to go on, because what can happen, it can become worse, it can just be harder to get you back on track.
And I'm sure you'll agree, simple things that we do in our yard can lead to big problems, so you want to prevent it, and if something does happen, take care of it.
Absolutely.
Dr. Burack, thank you. A lot of great information. We appreciate it. And of course, if you would like more information on Synergy Chiropractic in Dover, all you have to do is go to our website, delmarvalife.com, and click on the show tab. Jimmy and Lisa, I think my gardening is done out here. Everything looks great. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right. Good stuff to know.
We now look perfect and he's walking upright. That's a good thing.
That is a good thing.
Well, from your garden to public gardens in our area, there's so much that you can learn, not to mention the beauty you'll see when you visit one. We're going to tell you how you can get in for free.
And later, we all know being a farmer is a lot of hard work, so we thought it would be a good idea to send Brian to a dairy farm. He shows us the ins and outs of what it takes.
And how about starting your weekend with some big money? We've got your chance to win part of our $5,000 giveaway.
But first, now that we know how to fix our back and knee pain, what about our ankles? Dr. Oz has more.
Ankle sprains comprise 20% of all sports injuries. It's no wonder, since the ligaments in the outer ankle are not very stable. To treat ankle sprains, remember the acronym RICE. That stands for rest, ice, compression, and elevation. Practice strengthening exercises such as bending your ankle in all 4 directions. Proprioception, knowing where you and your limbs are as you move, is also important to regain motion. So practice walking with your eyes closed.